Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blunt, this is the fourth recent attack by either Russia as a nation state or organized Russian mafia. This is the kind of the thing that keeps us up at night, a pipeline shutting down in the nation from New York to Houston. The problem, as I see it, the chairman and I stood up CISA into law, which is on the defensive side. But the problem, as I see it, is we continue to see hundreds of these attacks, billions of dollars in ransomware, and yet there's no consequence to bad behavior. They get away with this every day. I introduced and marked up on the Foreign Affairs Committee the Cyber Diplomacy Act, which sets up an ambassador at large at the State Department to set up international norms and standards. So, Mr. Blunt, my question to you is, as the president now is going to sit down with Mr. Putin, and certainly I hope the president's going to raise these attacks, recent attacks by Russia, either as a nation state or by organized crime. I believe that we need to start thinking about going on the offensive and hitting them back. And there should be consequences. And in a recent statement, you stated, ultimately, the government needs to focus on the actors themselves. As a private company, we don't have a political capability of shutting down the host countries that have had these bad actors in them. Do you agree with my bill, but more importantly, that we need to stop just taking it? We need to respond, and we need to start hitting them back. Do you agree with that assessment?
Representative, I appreciate your leadership in this particular issue. That does very much address what you read in the press statement that I made. We have a responsibility, obviously, as operators to continue to strengthen our systems and protect our asset base. But we have to stop the threat actor themselves. We have to stop the criminals, and that's something private industry can't do without a partnership with the public sector. So I think your proposal is dead on, and we certainly support it. And I think every other operator in the United States would love to see us stand up and push back and not allow this to continue. And it's unfortunate it had to take a hit on a critical infrastructure asset to get the focus that it's getting now. But I think it's very important. And again, I appreciate your leadership on it.
And thank you, Mr. Blunt. Mr. Carmichael, FireEye has been a leader in this issue, and Congressman Langevin and I introduced a mandatory breach notification law. CISA is only as good as the information it gets, and the private sector has the majority of the threat information. I think Colonial Pipeline did a good job notifying CISA, but other companies don't. And would you agree with the assessment or the tone of this bill that we need to start looking at, instead of 50 different states, a federal law instead of patchwork of 50 states that would require a mandatory breach notification? If the identifiers can be taken out, it can be sanitized and scrubbed like we do with classified information, so that the fiduciary duty is not compromised in any way. But the threat information is mandatorily shared with CISA so it can better protect the nation from these attacks.
Yeah, Congressman, I certainly agree that right now the data breach disclosure laws are highly complex. Every state has their own nuanced requirements, and it will certainly be a welcome change to have one standard data breach disclosure requirement. It'll be much more simple for the organizations that are trying to figure out the complexity around notification requirements. In terms of getting information out to help other organizations defend themselves, absolutely, we agree with the spirit and the intent of that. We'd welcome the opportunity for CISA to take that information and disseminate it as best as they can, but they certainly need victim organizations to come forward and provide that the threat information to them so they have something to share. I think one of the challenges that organizations deal with today is the fear, the repercussions, and the scrutiny around data breaches. And so if there's a way to get information out to the government, to CISA, and to the broader community in a way where it doesn't feel like the victim organizations are going to face a penalty, I think that would be a welcome change.
Last question to you, sir, would be, we don't allow private companies to hack back, right? That's illegal. And it would create a Wild West scenario. But what is your opinion of the federal government protecting itself and responding in kind to nation state actors when they perpetrate these acts of cyber warfare, for lack of a better term, because they are destructive? And it shut down, the energy supply for days on the East Coast. What would be the best way to show them that there are consequences to their bad actions?
Yeah, so I certainly agree that private organizations shouldn't hack back, but from a government perspective, and perhaps certain select private organizations that maybe have the capability and the operational security to be able to conduct these offensive operations, I certainly think there's a way and an opportunity to disrupt the aggressive threat actors that continue to cause havoc in the United States. And so I do believe that there is an opportunity for us to get more aggressive, but we certainly need to define what are the rules of engagement.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the time to act now, and the international norms and standards need to be set with our allies and across the globe. And with that,
Thank you, gentlemen. This time has expired.